So I was wrong about some moveset buffs in a previous video. And you know what? I'm actually kind of okay with being wrong. Let's talk about it. What's going on, guys? Right by me teacher in the house, and I owe you guys an apology because I made a video a little while ago about all the moveset buffs. So it was an article published by Smogon, and we went down a list of all the things that were potentially broken, and some of the things that we talked about actually turned out not to happen. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm kind of okay with it. And honestly, I feel like if Game Freak had given these Pokemon these moves, except for one which I'm a little undecided on, maybe you guys can give me some of your thoughts too. But honestly, with the Tapus, I'm kind of glad they didn't get their terrain moves as expected. It was pretty widely publicized. A lot of different sources had stated that all of these Pokemon were going to get these moves. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm okay with the fact that they didn't. So let's talk about the ones that I'm definitely grateful for, and the ones that I'm kind of, or the one especially that I'm kind of undecided on. There's another one I'm kind of on the fence on, so let's talk about it. So to start with Tapu Koko, it did not get Rising Voltage, which is absolutely great for the game. Now, Tapu Koko already gets pretty powerful electric type moves. Gets access to Discharge, which is really nice in doubles especially, but it's also pretty decent in singles. It gets Thunderbolt. Oh, and Thunder if you're running Rain, but it also gets Wild Charge if you're running a physical set, right? So this thing gets a lot of electric type moves already. Does it get Electro Ball as well? I don't remember. It does. It does get Electro Ball. So, like, these are all things that on a fast Pokemon like Tapu Koko is amazingly strong. If they gave Rising Voltage to Tapu Koko as well, this would be a 140 base power special attack, stab boosted, on a Pokemon that already sets up electric terrain by itself. The only other electric terrain setter in the game is Pincurchin, which does get Rising Voltage, but it's a way, way worse Pokemon. So I'm kind of okay with this, because I feel like this would have pushed Tapu Koko to be on being banned in a lot of metagames. The other one is Misty Explosion, but I'd be honest, I don't think Koko ever would run Misty Explosion. All of these Tapus could potentially have got it, but I really don't see a world where Misty Explosion ever would have got any play. But at the same time, I don't really want the option of like Sash Koko Misty Explosion to be a thing. This is obviously only powered up in Misty Terrain, which Koko does not get. So that would be a pretty good reason for why this wasn't given. But Rising Voltage would have been an absolute pain in the backside, and I'm really glad we didn't get it. Next thing to talk about is Tapu Lele Expanding Force. Thank God this one wasn't a thing. So Tapu Lele's got an absolutely monstrous special attack stat. So putting Expanding Force, which is like a 140 base power move on this thing, especially on even just like Calm Mind variants, or even things like Choice Specs variants. Like, there are so many like ways that this would have been just flat out busted. And the fact of the matter is, the reason why this is so good for us in terms of the metagame and makes it balanceable is the fact that because Lele's part Fairy type, it also gets access to Moonblast, which would check the Dark types, which are immune to Expanding Force. So this would have been an absolutely broken combination if this was allowed. This definitely will be banned in Uber's tier. It would just be ridiculous. So I'm really happy that even though despite the power creeping that exists in Sword and Shield, a lot of Pokemon got a lot of pretty good buffs. A lot of new moves are very, very strong. This would have been way too far over the top, and it would have pushed Lele, who was already banned in Gen 7's OU, or not really banned in OU tier in Gen 7, but probably should have been. It was incredibly strong already. Lele Alakazam was something that's been talked about a lot. In fact, recently Smogon, I don't know what they've been smoking, but they actually dropped Tapu Lele and Alakazam down to the UU tier, which is ridiculous. But yeah, thankfully not broken, because Expanding Force isn't a thing. Now, let's talk about the ones I'm a little unsure about. So first up is going to be Tapu Fini that did not get Misty Explosion or Flip Turn.
Finny is probably the only Pokemon of this list that could use Misty Explosion, but I feel like, honestly, it's way more situational than Dazzling Gleam. I don't see a world where Misty Explosion is worth it. It's a 100 base power special move that turns into Fairy move. It's obviously powered up in Misty Terrain, but it makes it 150 base power if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. It might be 200 and doubled, but I'm not entirely sure. But this could have seen some play in VGC, but again, I feel like it's worse than Dazzling Gleam, and I feel like you would just run Dazzling Gleam. And in singles format, I don't see a world where you would ever run Misty Explosion. Moonblast just offers so much more. So, I don't think this would have been too bad. Flip Turn, on the other hand, is an interesting one. Now, Flip Turn is a physical move, it's not a special move, so that could have been a justification for giving it. Finny's physical attack stat, not particularly good. So, I could have seen a world where this got Flip Turn, because one of the biggest criticisms I've always had of Tapu Fini is, yes, it's a really nice bulky support Pokemon, but it's kind of hard to pivot out of it. It's easy to pivot into it, but as it doesn't have a pivoting move, like Flip Turn or U-Turn, or, I mean, Volt Switch wouldn't make any sense, but I could see the other two being a thing. It kind of feels like it's a little bit unfortunate, because it would be nice to have this as an option to pivot. That being said, though, giving this amount of bulk pivot may be a little too strong. Much like the Milotic Syndrome when you're running Marvel Scale, if you gave that thing U-Turn, it would be a bit of a nightmare. I could kind of see a world where that's a thing. Milotic did, however, get Flip Turn, so that is an example which could be interesting. Even Primarina got Flip Turn, right? So, I don't know. I feel like Finny kind of got a bit hard done by. I would have liked it to have got Flip Turn. I think it would have been a nice move for it. I don't think it would have been that broken because you would have to get rid of something like Scald, which may have been okay for out of or for in Misty Terrain, but out of Misty Terrain, Scald's kind of nice. And sometimes you don't even run a water move anyway, because sometimes you run Icy Wind for speed control. So, I don't know. Flip Turn, I'm on the fence about. I feel like this could have been a possibility. But we'll talk about Bulu next as well, because Bulu, to me, not getting Grassy Glide really sucks for Bulu, because this was a great opportunity for Bulu to actually get back into the game. Bulu often considered the weakest of the Tapus, by virtue of the fact that terrain actually helps its opponents as well as itself. It's kind of an unfortunate situation for Bulu. Now, I can see a world where you would trade Wood Hammer, which has a lot of recoil but more power, or Horn Leech, which is the other grass move it typically runs. Like, I could see a world where removing one of these for Grassy Glide probably wouldn't be a bad thing, you know? This definitely would be a very, very strong priority move, for sure. It's like 80 base power stab priority. It's really, really strong. It's a good move. But honestly, if you want the raw power, you'd probably still run Wood Hammer. And if you need the extra longevity because you're not running Leftovers or something like that, maybe you're running Assault Vest, and you need Horn Leech for recovery, I don't know. I could see a world where these two would still be picked over Grassy Glide, but it depends on what kind of set you're running. If you're running Banded, Grassy Glide is nice. You know, if you're running Life Orb, Grassy Glide is nice. And the kind of comparison I can make here is if we look at Rillaboom, which is the other grassy terrain setter here, the stats are not that different in a way. Like, aside from the special bulk, which kind of isn't really a thing on Rillaboom, obviously the base stats are a little bit skewed by virtue of the fact that Bulu's a legendary Pokemon. But honestly, I don't see a world where picking these wouldn't be bad. I could see a world where Bulu could have got Grassy Glide, and I don't think it's a problem. So for me, I felt like Bulu got a little bit hard done by here. I would have liked to have seen it got it. But saying that, though, it's kind of difficult to justify giving Bulu Grassy Glide and Finny Flip Turn and not give anything to Coco Lele. So I kind of feel like they just decided straight up to just not give the Tapu's terrain moves in general, which I think is a perfectly fair decision. I think a lot of people would have been a little bit antsy if these got buffs and these didn't, although most people in the Pokemon competitive community, especially in singles format, could easily argue a world where these two are very strong as they are, so wouldn't have needed buffs. As Finny, obviously the bulkier end of the spectrum, and then you know, giving Bulu a buff, I don't think is that bad. Giving it Grassy Glide wouldn't have been too bad. It did get some other little moves. It does get close combat now, which is something to bear in mind. Because previously its fighting move was Superpower, which has the major drawback of lowering your attack stat, so people didn't really run it. People didn't like running it anyway. But honestly, I don't know. What do you guys think about the Tappies not getting their terrain moves? Do you think any of them got hard done by, or do you think this is perfectly okay? Let me know, because I'm definitely interested to know your thoughts. But either way, thank you all so much for watching. My name is Rybombi Teacher. Stay safe, stay awesome, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.